Welcome to How I Got Here, hosted by seasoned educator Jeremy Proper. This is a podcast of conversations with his former students discussing their journey from middle school to where they are today. Guests highlight their successes and the life lessons learned along the way. And now let's welcome the host, Jeremy Proper.
If you like and enjoy what you're hearing, please like, subscribe, hit 5 stars, whatever you can to help us out. Thank you so much. Welcome to How I Got Here with Mr. Proper. I'll be talking to former students who will tell their story of their personal journey from Mr. Proper's class, aka Club 128, to where they are now. Everyone has a different path to get to where they are now, and that path may just be the beginning to where they actually want to be. In these podcasts, I hope to tap into the journeys that my former students have taken, for them to share their experiences with my current students, and for that matter, anyone else who is interested in seeing how hard work in and out of the classroom actually pays off. Let's welcome today's guest, Armaan Uplecar. Hello, Armaan. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Wonderful. Now that I'm talking to you, you just live in the lifestyle. It's unbelievable. You know, we never know what our students are going to turn into. We never know what their path is going to be. As teachers, we may see them in a certain light, and especially me, because it's middle school. You're not a full adult. You're not really a child anymore. You're still a kid, but not a child. And you're learning, and it's just so interesting to see what kids turn out to be. So I'd like you to take a few minutes to briefly introduce yourself. Please include what year you left the Don, what year you left high school, when you graduated college, post-college, and what you're currently doing now.
Sure. I think the Cliff Notes version of it is, after middle school, I went to high school up over in West Palm at Dreyfus, which is the School of the Arts out there. So you have to audition and interview to go in. And I remember working really, really hard to do that. But I remember the thing is when I got into Dreyfus, I felt kind of intimidated, right? Because a lot of the other kids who were in there came from the arts middle school. They came from Bach. So I feel like they all had kind of a head start. A lot of them knew each other and whatnot. They were also talented in terms of like doing dance class and playing, saxophone or, painting. So I remember feeling like I had to catch up to really be on their level. But, my time at Dreyfus was really special. I had a lot of great mentors, a lot of great friends. I started working in the film department there. We could rent out cameras and shoot music videos and short films.
Nice.
And
That's cool.
So we would go all around.
Is that what you signed up to go for? Was film always the dream?
Yeah, so I went in there for this department called communications, which was writing initially.
Yeah.
But they it's folded into their broadcast and their film program too. So both of those things had a lot of appeal to me.
Nice. Okay,
Yeah.
so this was something you always wanted to do.
Yeah,
So
it's something I
then,
wanted for a long time. Yeah.
nice. So then, was that the springboard to college? Is that what you pursued in college next?
Yeah. So after high school, I applied to go to a couple different universities, and I ended up going to Florida State, and they had a film program there. And the thing I really liked about that program was, beyond the in-state tuition and bright futures and whatnot.
Yeah, money.
Yeah, was their film program. It was super small. It was only 30 people, but
Wow,
yeah. But I think
that is tiny.
yeah, it was very small. But they had like a real emphasis on uh, I guess a pragmatic approach to film. There was always this kind of idea, you hear film school and you think about a bunch of kids in the class wasting money to watch movies.
Yes.
Yeah. But for them, it was really a matter of, you know, so much of the time was devoted to actually being on set, actually working with the equipment. And there was always this kind of
Oh, it's more
notion,
hands-on.
very hands-on. And there's always a notion that, after this, you're there to enter into an actual workforce. It's not, a theoretical exercise or something to just pass the time, right? It's like actual on-the-job training in a way.
Right. Yeah, it's like if you were going to school and you were doing plumbing or auto mechanics. As soon as you learn how to do it, you're off and running.
Sure. And I think that was what they really excelled at was there was, a lot of craft and a lot of, there's a lot of different positions you can have on a film set. So they kind of gave you a good primer in terms of like, well, after you graduate from here, you can go and feasibly get a job on set and not sit around and be like, well, all I did was, watch a couple movies.
Wow. So did
Yeah.
you have to then work your way up? Like, is that how it is? Like you start as like a grip or you start as like a lower end position, or it's just dependent upon what people are looking for? Like, how does that go?
In terms of the school or in terms of the industry?
Yeah, the industry. Once you're done with school and it's okay, you have your degree, you got all this
Sure.
training. Now, were you like low man on totem pole and had to work your way up?
Oh yeah. So gripping, for example, that's a union job typically. So you're gonna need some. It's a specialized skill, right, in order to do properly.
Hmm.
So when you're at the bottom of the totem pole, you start off as a production assistant, which is
PA.
basically,
Yeah.
yeah. So you're basically, fulfilling jobs like you're shutting down traffic, on the road. You're stopping people from walking the shots. You're sometimes, getting coffee and whatnot for talent. So it's the least glamorous,
Right, right.
yeah,
The quote unquote entry level job.
for sure. So I started doing that in Atlanta.
Oh,
Um,
nice. Yeah, there's a
yeah,
lot of work in Atlanta for sure.
yes, yes. So I started off in commercials, and then I ended up working on feature films and TV shows. And then while I was in Atlanta, I started shooting music videos and whatnot for different artists,
Hmm.
and that was kind of my stint there. But after being in Georgia for a little while, I kind of realized that some of the stuff I really wanted to pursue and learn, it was actually over on the West Coast, right?
Yeah,
Because while a lot of work comes to Atlanta to shoot,
Hollywood's where it's at.
right, the decisions, the kind of infrastructure of like purse strings and people, the politics of the industry, you have to go out to LA to really learn that. So I
Yeah,
moved
yeah.
out to LA. I started working as a researcher in documentary and TV shows.
Nice.
And what that kind of entails is you're basically, a lot of times you're the first point of contact for interview subjects and whatnot. So you have to kind of create an environment where you're talking to folks who, might have a very different background than you. It's not like you're talking to criminal defense lawyers or, let's say musicians. And you kind of have to create an environment where not only are you going to have to, get some information out of them, but you want them to feel comfortable enough
Right.
to tell you
Feel like you
something.
know what you're talking about. You need to know some law to talk to a lawyer. You need to understand the
Right,
music industry to talk to the musicians. Yeah. Oh, wow. I never knew that.
right,
That's amazing. Wow. So you're
right.
basically like a mini expert on all the topics, so they feel comfortable opening up to you.
I don't know about many expert, but just somebody who I think you can have a
Proficient.
conversation with. Yeah, yeah,
Proficient. Okay, maybe expert's too far, but you know what I'm saying. Like you
good
need to be
enough.
proficient, so you're not talking about mens rea, and they're like, "What are you talking about?" That is a legal term, but yeah, it's got to apply correctly. No, I understand. Yeah,
Yeah,
I tell that to people all the time. Actually, it's funny you mention that because I talk to kids and I go, "Look, I ask you about your culture and where you're from because I'm interested because I want to know about you." And if I get to know about you and you see that I'm interested in you, hopefully that changes your opinion of me. I'm not just some run of the mill teacher. I actually am interested in your life and what's going on. And, I was talking to a kid the other day and I couldn't believe it that they went home and told their parents, like, oh, Mr. Proper asked me about my last name and where it comes from and how to pronounce it. And they wound up having this amazing conversation. And she goes, I wound up telling my parents, I really think that you would like Mr. Proper. You have a lot in common. All because I took the time to just ask her about her last name and where she came from. And it was
right,
just so interesting. And then this is a really shy kid. And I didn't think that she was really, would take it that way. And then the next day came in chatting me up, super talkative. All you have to do is show that you're taking an interest in someone, and that means a lot. And especially to a kid, because they're used to work, 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 work. Is that Rihanna? And that's it. They're not used to somebody taking the time to ask them a question about themselves. So I didn't know that really even existed, but I guess you said it was documentary films, so you got to get the information somehow.
right. I think it's just really about you trying to create an environment where, obviously it's my job to talk to the person, but you want to create a mutually beneficial situation where they enjoy speaking to you and, maybe they'll tell you some stuff that you weren't expecting.
Nice. Yeah, yeah, I could
Right,
see that. Like again, just making that connection and getting people to open up. To be perfectly honest, I've done that on the podcast. I've had kids say things that I never thought they would. One of my interviews a long time ago, Connor, he told me a story that he went to Dreyfus 2. He actually he didn't go. He got accepted, but the whole reason was the girl that he was infatuated from middle school was going there. And his dad sat him down and said, "Do you really want to spend 4 years here? What happens if this doesn't work out?" But I couldn't believe that he opened up and said it on the podcast. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, people are willing to tell their stories, and it's so wild that they will, because it's life. And again, the podcast is for the kids in the class, anyone else who wants to listen, but it's to hopefully help people who were just like Armaan back in the day, who maybe they weren't sure what they wanted to do, or maybe they do want to go into the movies, but they have no idea. And that's why I think this would be great. So if you have a moment, please discuss what you just came back from, because you were gone for a lengthy period of time.
Sure. So, right now I work as a writer and a producer for a couple different true crime programs. But then recently I've been in Europe for about the last year or so. I'm working on a feature film that I'm writing and directing that we're developing right now. So being out there was part of my, the plan is we're going to be shooting it out there. So being out in Europe was about researching it and kind of figuring out how we're going to actually accomplish this on a
And
scale out there.
had you were you are you at the point of scouting locations? Are you that far along, or are you just trying to figure out the plot, or like where are you along the lines? Because this is not my forte. I don't know it very well.
Right. So at this point, we're moving into location scouting. I'm going back out there. I think in the next 2 months, if all goes according to plan, to do some more research, to scout locations, and then by next spring, God willing, we'll be shooting.
Nice. That's incredible. Now, I'm very limited in my scope and understanding, but like, what format are you using to shoot this?
So some of that is still, it's still under works. It's probably going to be a shot on digital, on something like a Arri Alexa, which is,
Nice.
I guess you would say like, I don't know how to describe it. Maybe the standard bearer for what a lot of films are shot on nowadays.
So old school used to be like the size of the film, and they would be like 35 millimeters, 70 millimeters. So in
Right.
digital, what is that modern equivalent?
So at this point, it's kind of you would say like 4K, right? Would
Oh,
would
okay.
be
4K. Okay.
right. And it's
Yeah.
still there's still a matter of depending on what lens size you use. There's a lot of different nuances in terms of that format and how you exhibit it. But it's not as like you said, when you're shooting on film, you're kind of limited in
Yeah.
some ways by you have to purchase that amount of film.
Right.
You can shoot for only say like 7.5 minutes at a time, depending on the size of the cartridge. And some of my terminology here might be butchered because
No,
I
no,
don't shoot on
you're
film.
right on. You're right on point. Because with digital, it's just as much space as you have, or cards, that memory cards, or whatever it is that you're using. So, are you soup to nuts? Are you writer, producer, cinematographer? Are you doing all these things, or do you have other people who will be assuming those roles?
No, so I'm the writer director, and then we'll have our cinematographer, we'll have a producer, we'll have production designer, costumes, down the line of because with filmmaking, it's like it really lives and dies on collaborating with other people and bringing in other people to really uh, lend their talent, their expertise in their fields. So
Interesting.
I know what I do well, and then I know there's a lot of different departments that I can't possibly hold a candle to.
Sure. Well,
Yeah,
there's a lot going on in a film. It's like when people say I made this film all by myself, I'm like, what did this take 10 years? There's so many jobs.
sure.
I, I have always wondered if you could succinctly, if possible, could you give a real definition, or how about this, a layman's definition of what a producer really is and does? Because I'm to this day still not 100% sure.
So a producer is, technically a producer would kind of be the boss of a project. They typically are the ones who are, while, say a writer might write a screenplay, but the producer is the one who will take that script and say, you know what, I think there's a project here. Let's attract the financing. Let's kind of build out the infrastructure of like, how are we going to do this on a practical scale and level, right?
Hmm.
So producers are essentially the people who are making the project happen on a
Right.
logistical basis,
Gotcha.
and steering it. And a director would be somebody who would you would say is like the creative author,
Right.
or lodestar of that project. But the producer is the person who's in charge of logistically. This is how we're going to make it happen.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I knew it was always the finance guy or girl, but I didn't
Mhm.
understand beyond the money what next happens. Okay, that makes sense. All right.
Right.
Because you hear that word thrown around all over the place. Plus, when famous actors get, super famous, then all of a sudden they get, producing credit. So, like, I don't know, for whatever reason, the Big Bang Theory came into my head. And all of a sudden you see Jonathan Galecki, or however you pronounce his name, and now he's producing it. And you're like, okay, well, what does that actually mean? And in a TV show, they already have funding. So to me, I'm like, they're not getting more funding. They're only getting more viewership because they're popular. So I guess in a TV show, it's different. Is that true? Or am I just mixing these things up?
So there's a lot of nuances to it. I think, for example, when you see an actor as a producer, that might be something that's worked into their deal, or it might be something where the work is funneled through their production company. So
Mm,
they're a producer in that sense. But
okay.
if you go back to say, if you go back to some like the 70s or 80s, where people say it's the real heyday of filmmaking, like The Godfather, you'll see there's
Right.
only one producer
Yes.
in charge of it. So the terminology is kind of it's a little elastic. Producers, one producer might be doing a certain workload, and another producer might come in and do another aspect of the job, and another
Gotcha.
producer might not do anything and just kind of coast by on the credit.
Right. Right.
So
So it's
they're
project specific and or what they need. Gotcha.
sure, yeah,
Okay, well, that makes sense. I appreciate that explanation because, like, I've always looked that kind of was my favorite thing. And my friends, when we were kids in high school, would get mad at me. Like, the movie's over, they're getting up and leaving. I'm like, where are you going? I want to read the credits. They're like, you don't know anybody up there. I'm like, how do you know that? Maybe I do. Who
maybe you
knows?
do.
And what's crazy is the older I got, I actually started to see people that I knew, and I was
Right.
like, you see, they got into this industry as well, and it's just interesting to see that. And like I said, it just blew my mind the first time I saw somebody's name that I knew, and I was like, wow, so they actually turned this into a real job, and then their titles change, or they get little credits after their name, and it's like, oh, so they're moving on up and becoming more. So if you are a cinematographer, and is it ASC? What is a title like that?
So some of these are unions and guilds.
Mm,
So for example, PGA would be the Producers Guild of America. ASC, I believe it's the American Society of Cinematographers. Don't hold me to
that's it.
some of this
No, that's right. I
information.
remember now that you say it. I remember it, but I couldn't remember before I asked.
Right.
That's so cool. Yeah, I didn't mean to put you on the spot with those things, but thank you for coming up with it. That's so cool.
I'll
But
have to double check my work and make sure I'm actually
no, no,
doing.
it's all good. It's all good. Well, first off, thank you so much for coming on and telling my students about your life experiences. It's so important that young kids can see the future in some way. And this is the future because Armaan was in my class and he was at the Don and he was you. He sat there thinking about, what am I going to do? Not only did he think about it, he kind of knew what he wanted to do. And now he's on telling you that he did it. So if you ever wondered what it was like to be in movies, if you ever wondered what it was like to be in film and be on the other end of the camera, this is the cat to listen to because he just was in Europe for a year. He's constantly making movies. He's writing. He's doing all these wonderful things. And that's why this podcast touches so many people because it's the same questions, but everybody's story is different because everyone's doing something else. The only thing they have in common actually is me in my classroom. That's it. Because everybody else is doing something, whether they're a doctor or a lawyer, whether they're, a professional athlete, whether they're, an up and coming athlete. It doesn't matter what it is. It's just incredible to see that people have dreams. And just like Disney says, dreams really do come true. But as I said in the intro, you didn't just sit on your laurels. Your dad just didn't give you $10 million and just say, go make a movie and see what happens. This was hard work.
Yeah, no, $10 million sounds nice.
Wouldn't it? It would
I'll
sound
take it.
nice to me, and I don't even make movies. I think I could even make a movie with $10 million.
Yeah.
There's probably $1 million movie and $9 million worth of screw ups. So going back to the questions, um, how and when did you get inspired for learning? Was there a particular time, place, event, something that happened, person that all of a sudden sparked this idea that, you know what, I like to learn?
You know, I was thinking about it, when I saw your list of questions, and when I was in elementary school, right, I had this. I had a speech therapy teacher who would come in. He would take a couple kids out of the classroom, once a week, and we would do like a. I had a speech impediment growing up, and I might still have it. I tend to butcher a lot of pronunciations, but
Hmm. No, I don't
but
hear it.
yeah, but he was this guy. His name was Mr. Beers, and he was just really he made all the speech classes and whatnot we would do. He made it all feel effortless. He all made it feel like a game. It never felt like you were on the spot because you couldn't speak correctly
Right.
or whatnot. It was just kind of, and I was thinking about the other day because I do a fair amount of public speaking and
Yeah.
pitching and whatnot. So
In
you,
your
you kind
job,
of
you have to.
right. And I think that made such a big difference to me, and he made
That's
it feel like
incredible.
it wasn't work. It never felt like
Yeah.
there was something I needed to improve about myself. It was all just fun and games. The way he structured that class.
And I think
So
that's how
yeah,
kids learn the best. If you try to throw out the rote routine, it's kind of funny. Just a couple weeks ago, one of the kids asked me, "Hey, Mr. Proper, were you good at school?" And I was like, "No." And they're like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, no, I really wasn't that good at school." And they're like, "Well, why are you a school teacher?" And I said, "To be perfectly honest, like Frank Sinatra said, so I can do it my way." I go, "I teach the way I wanted to be taught." Now, of course, you're probably going to lose 10% of the kids who are not that kind of learner. But for the other 90%, they love it. I'm fun, I'm gregarious, I tell jokes, and not at anyone's expense. I'm not there to put people down. I'm not trying to make them feel bad so I feel good. I'm just there to pass the time. Like, we have to be here. We might as well make it as fun as possible. And I'm really glad that a situation that could have turned out really, really bad, it was turned around and made fun. It's interesting. My wife and I were talking about this over the summer about how just like you, I myself had issues with learning. Like, I had a reading disability. I had too many concussions as a kid, and my brain was remapped. And I was in the reading. The kid can't read so good club, and
right.
I was talking to my wife about this, and she's like, I was always so jealous of the kids that got to go to the reading nook. That's what it was called at her school. And I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, man, they got to leave class, which was usually really boring. They got to, excuse me, they got to go to this cool reading place, sit in bean bags, read books that they enjoyed. And I said, honey, you could read really well and you enjoyed it. We were the ones that couldn't, and we were trying to learn how to do it. I just think it's all a matter of perspective. And she
Right.
was like, really? And I go, yeah, it would have been great for you because you enjoyed it. It was torture for us because we stunk at it. And she was just like, wow. So I really feel that life in general is just a perspective. And some people see the things that you can't stand as amazing, and vice versa. And we've all had it. I just don't think people are as quick to admit it, especially obviously when they're kids. They're definitely not going to. But you'd be surprised, though. A lot of kids today are really open with whatever their issues or disabilities are. And I kind of feel that that's a good thing, because if you own it, somebody else can't turn it around on you. Somebody else can't say anything. I'm like, look, I told you. You didn't need to know this information, but I told you. And I think that's cathartic and freeing, that we just own up to what it was, and that was in the past, and we're all moving forward.
Right.
So, um, you said that you answered my next question. You said because he made learning fun. Could you go dive a little deeper into that? Could you remember maybe a specific lesson or thing that you used to do regularly that made you feel more confident?
I mean, everything in his, again, we'd have his classes, I believe, once a week, and he would just turn everything. It was never a matter of, you know, um, it was always a game, right? There was always a game orientation to it, where if he would just kind of play like word games with us, right?
Hmm.
And if because of myself and my classmates, whenever we our speech impediment, or we'd say something the wrong way, come through, it would just kind of be a gentle correction that we fix, but we'd still be going on. The focus was still like, let's move the game along, right? So
Oh, gotcha.
it was
So he
it
never made you
was
feel bad for being wrong. He was just correcting and moving the goalposts further. He was like, okay, let's keep going. It's another first down. Yes, maybe you didn't get this right, but yeah, wow, that's awesome. So
right,
even though you got it wrong, he in other classes probably I know I did. I was always made to feel bad when I screwed up or if I read a word wrong. The teacher's like giving you the what do you mean you don't know how to read anti-disestablishmentarianism, which used to be the longest word in the English language. And it's like, lady, it's got like 50 letters in it. Give me a break, It's like
right.
help a brother out. And so that's awesome. And that's also, like I said, what I try to institute into the classroom where it's like, you have so many kids who are so super fast and you have to learn wait time. And it's like, look, guys, just because you get it in a millisecond doesn't mean that somebody else isn't going to get it in 30 seconds. But it's okay to sit there and wait. I'd rather you get the right answer and wait for it to happen than somebody else blurt out the right answer and not give someone else a chance. Because, like, little Jeremy, little Armaan, little anybody else who has these, issues that they're just like, I don't want the world to know. As soon as that happens, now all of a sudden you're a clam and you're never going to say anything again. And that's it. And it's like, I want the kids to feel like, hey, 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 give them a second. There's nothing wrong with it. Just because, we're Ferraris and they're Priuses, they'll get there eventually. If you could turn back time and tell your eighth grade self some advice, what would you tell them? And as I've added, would you listen? Because I know I wouldn't. I'd be like, who's this person from the future trying to tell me how to live my life?
That's a good question. I guess I would say just don't be intimidated by anything. Don't be afraid of anything. There's really not there's not a situation you can't walk into and figure out. And I think the best things come out of being put outside your comfort zone.
Wow, that's awesome. Might you have I've never heard that one before. Might you have an example of that?
I'll give like a low stakes
Yeah,
example.
go ahead.
So I mean, even when I went to, I think I was mentioning before, I got into this high school,
Hmm.
Dreyfus, which has it's an arts program.
Right,
And a lot of the people who went to that school, they all kind of came from the same middle school, so they
right,
kind of all came in with a certain, I think, attachment to the arts and whatnot. They kind of knew what they were up to, and they were all
right.
very, very talented people.
They had 3 years at Bach. For those of you that don't know, it's the middle school of the arts, which is another application. You have to apply to get in there. You have to be a great, like you said, I don't know, trumpet player, sax player, an amazing, vocalist, and then you have to audition to get in. So yeah, they're already there, and you're like, oh, I'm playing catch up for 3 years.
Sure, sure. And I think the other part, I remember, when I go in for the interview, I really just I remember being real nervous because I really wanted to get into school. I knew it would be such a great opportunity. Um, and I knew everyone kind of talked about like it was extremely hard to get into. And I remember, I met this guy who ended up being my teacher. His name is Dr. Deleuze, and I didn't know him at the time. But we're sitting down to do this interview, and I remember I was in eighth grade. I remember it was the first time I found out when I'm nervous. My leg would vibrate.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I remember it
I know
happened the
that
first
oh
time.
too well.
I remember it happening for the first time. I didn't know I didn't know my body would react like this.
Of
And
course.
but obviously I got accepted at school, and since then I've gone into a lot of interviews, a lot of places with people who I've either some people who I've admired from a distance. I'd have to sit in for an interview with them to try and get a job or try and get acceptance like this program, or go to college. And there's a lot of times where you're going to be put on the spot, where you're going to be outside of your comfort zone, but it doesn't mean you should ever go into it feeling like you're at a loss.
Nice.
I think I learned that there's a way when you go into any situation, you need to come in beyond the goal of, oh, I want to get this position, I want to get this job, I want to be accepted in this program, or whatnot. You're trying to convey, what is it about you and what you do, and your work that's important that this person needs to know. And then regardless of they accept you, they deny you, uh, that way you've communicated what's important to you, and that's really the most important thing.
Nice. It's funny because
Yeah.
as soon as you said leg shaking, it
Yeah.
took me back to my wedding day. And I never knew I had that either. And there I
Yeah.
am standing up, getting ready to get married. And after it was over, my brother was like, "You were shaking like a leaf on a tree." And I was like, I was so nervous. He goes, "She
Yeah.
was standing right there. You guys
Yeah.
went to Arizona. You honestly believe this woman was going to go all the way out to Arizona, stand there and say no in front of all these people?" I'm like, I didn't know what she was going to say. I'd never asked anybody to marry me before. I've never been in that situation before. So
Yeah.
I didn't know how to behave or how to act. And I had the exact same problem. My right knee was shaking like I was Elvis back in the 50s. It was
Yeah. Yeah.
unbelievable. We've all been there. It just happens because we're not expecting it. The one thing I did want to ask you though,
Hmm.
since you didn't go to bond, what did you do at the Don or on your own to prepare you for them to take you? Like you obviously were you in Stansel's like announcements class? What did you do? Because like you said, you're competing against kids that had done this for 3 years prior. So what was your resume that helped you get in? Because that's not easy.
I didn't really have a resume. I think
Wow.
the closest thing I had was I remember I really wanted to get in Stansel's class, and I knew Stansel from before because he was a teacher in my elementary school,
Right, right.
and so and I was honestly, I mean, he's met my grandmother, like our families. I've
Wow.
known him for a long time,
Yeah.
but I would apply to his class every year. They wouldn't let me in, and finally, the last semester, I finally get a chance to be in.
Okay.
But yeah, and that was exciting because you get to actually work with the cameras
Hands
and
on.
whatnot.
Yes. You're
Yeah,
you're finally producing something. Right.
right.
Right. And
But
back then,
um,
you couldn't really, like, a 13, 14-year-old kid wasn't going out and buying an HD camera. Those things were ridiculously expensive. So here having your hands on like a 4K camera that was like, $5,000 or $6,000. Because I remember the equipment he had was amazing.
yeah, I mean, it definitely wasn't for. I mean, it would probably be if we were lucky, it was maybe 720
Okay. All right. So
at the
I'm
time.
dating myself. I'm not going far back enough, but you know what I'm saying. Like he
Yeah,
always had really decent equipment for not being a media school. We were just a technology school. To have that abilities, even to have that quality was still probably good back then.
I mean, I think you mentioned resume, and I guess the thing that I'd say about that is beyond the resume is like you're always just trying to convey what's your perspective,
Hmm.
even in these interviews. And I remember, I remember I went in for that Dreyfus interview. I remember they gave us like a picture, right? You're supposed to write a story based off a picture, and they gave us it was a picture of a bunch of suitcases.
Hmm.
And I remember we had done in class, we had read this book. I don't know how to pronounce it correctly, but I think it's called Farewell from Manzanar.
Hmm.
I think it was about Japanese internment camps
Right. Right. Yes. Yes.
in the 40s,
Hmm.
and so I wrote about that.
Hmm.
And I think you're just trying to convey something beyond resume or skill set. I think what you learn is as long as you've got a perspective and you have something that you want to say or you're curious about, I think that trumps. You
Everything.
know,
Yeah.
yeah, for
That's pretty
sure.
amazing because for someone who's 3 years behind everybody else to just get there and write a story that moves enough people to go, hey, this guy needs to come here. That's really impressive because you were putting yourself in quite a position. I mean, I remember you were a really good student, but this is different because it's not about, obviously they want good grades, but it's for a specific thing that you really hadn't done. So to have that ability innate and just say, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to write the best story I can. And they took you. That's amazing because so many other people probably had the education, but maybe they didn't have the ability. Kind of like what we were saying before the podcast about how off the cuff comedian I can do without a problem. But if you sit me in a room and say, write me something funny, the page is going to be empty. Like I can't take it from the brain to the pen. But if I'm off the cuff and I'm just making jokes and situational, I can do that all day. So everybody has their talents, but it's amazing that you were able to reach down inside and pull out something that I guarantee you, man, most people just couldn't do. Most people couldn't just sit there and say, okay, I'm going to write a screenplay or an essay or whatever on this topic of suitcases. I mean, who knows what you were going to talk about? Like, And
right,
you didn't know that ahead of time. This was just put in front of you, and it's like, you have what, like an hour or whatever amount of time, write something.
right.
So the fact that you were good enough at writing and good enough at putting an idea down, and that in itself at 14 years old is pretty amazing that you were able to do that. Because like I said, all those Bach kids, they had classes on how to do that. They had someone showing them what to do. And I'm sure they even had teachers who maybe even went to Dreyfus who could be like, oh yeah, on my interview, we had to do this, this, and this. Like, you probably just went in there cold. I mean, did you have any idea what was going to happen, or it was just kind of like shooting from the hip?
No, no idea at all. I
Wow.
think it
That,
was
you see,
just,
that's even more impressive to me.
yeah, but I think the thing is, the other part of it is, I guess going to school with all those kids who, I kind of at a more, advanced, artistic level. I mean, they're all like, it's funny because you go to school with them and they're all so, off the bat, like witty and funny
Right,
and
right, right.
slick, a lot of them. Yeah.
Sure,
But they're, you learn a lot from them. I feel like you're around so many talented people in an environment like that.
sure, sure. You
And
absorb
they're
all that.
all,
Hmm.
oh yeah, and they're so ambitious. They're so, they have so many different disciplines that they're skilled in, and you kind of, it makes you want to be better. It makes you learn stuff from them. So it just really, that environment in particular was real.
That's
I
amazing.
feel like a game changer for me.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I remember when back in the day when you were in my class, I was doing this thing called Project Smart, and they used to give us all these Apple computers and iPads and all this Apple stuff, and we had to learn how to use it. And one of the things was we had to make, like, every couple of months we had to make like a different movie or whatever. And I was always slick with all this stuff and thought I knew what I was doing. And they had us divided into two groups. And I felt like I was kind of like the king of one group. And then all of a sudden, over time, people started to drop out. So they just made a one group out of the two. And all of a sudden, they were showing the movies, and this one movie comes up, and it just is blowing my mind. And I'm like, this is amazing. And then my movie came up literally right after it, and I was almost embarrassed to see it. Yet after it was over, people came up to me and they're like, oh my God, your movie was so good. But all I thought about was how much better the movie was that the person who made in front of me. And then we became friends, and it was great to have someone, like you said, who pushed me. Now I had someone who was better than me. Like, I was king of the hill in group one, and this person was king of the hill in group two. And all of a sudden, now I had someone who was better than me, and it made me want to be better. So I totally understand that. But they were willing to show me, and then we worked together, and then we became coaches, and then we were teaching other people. So yeah, I understand that environment, and it's really cool because you're in something for a reason and you're all there for the same reason. Maybe the end result is a little different. Like, you are more behind the scenes, and maybe many of these people, I'm assuming, wanted to be actually actors and not so much the producers and the camera people and stuff like that. Was that more the case? The people you were with,
No,
or
I
was
mean, it was all of the above. I think it's like, I think working in, I think being ambitious about, oh, we want to shoot, we want to do music videos, we want to film people. I think the real benefit of it was that, it gives you a reason to go to the theater department and be like, let's work with some of these actors out here, and let's work with some people from the dance department or people in the visual arts and whatnot. So I think the real, I think, thrill and benefit of it was that you get to have all these people who are so talented in their respective disciplines, and they, you get to have them come together for the basis of collaborating on a project. And I think a lot of the friends I had were also, directors, also people, cinematographers, you know, really gifted behind the camera. I
right?
remember
So
they
you
would teach me
gravitated
things
to the
that,
same people, but yet the other people who were in front of the camera were still teaching you as well. So that's awesome that you were open to that at such a young age, because most people are like, oh, I don't want to. And it's wild because the industry is so cutthroat, but yet at that level, you guys seemingly, unless I'm wrong, seem really to gel and come together and work with each other rather than against each other.
sure, I mean, we're all having fun. I think that's the
Yeah,
most important
yeah,
thing,
that's
is
got
we
to
were
be it.
all in it to have a good time. Like, it was a good excuse to, to be out all night, or go to Miami,
Right.
take the train down to Miami. It was really,
Right.
you had a reason
Right. Right.
to
Right.
hang out with your friends.
Right. Right.
And
You're telling your mom you're going to Miami on a Friday night at 11 o'clock, and they're like, "Huh?" And you're like, "Oh, it's school related." Oh, okay. And it changes
yeah,
the dynamic immediately. Oh, wow.
right.
That is
So it
so
was,
cool.
yeah, it was, we had a blast doing all that. I think even still, I tell, I'm still in touch with a lot of friends from back then. And, I
That's
tell them, that's still some of the most fun I ever had is
that's
doing it with
awesome.
y'all.
Oh,
Yeah,
nothing like, old memories that you share with people and it comes back and it's always positive. That's
for
amazing.
sure.
So, outside of the speech therapy, could you talk about a challenging educational experience that you had to overcome? And did it ultimately make you a better person because you figured out something about yourself?
Um, can I talk about college? Is that okay?
Yeah, go right ahead. Sure. Doesn't matter what level. Because some people like me, it was back in the elementary school days with reading. And then, sometimes people don't really have a bad thing or a difficult challenge until college. Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I think so. My first year at university, right? The way the program I was in worked is that we had to get all of our gen ed requirements done within the first year.
Right.
So you pretty much you do all that, and then after that, you're completing the film department. For the 6 semesters straight or whatever, and then you graduate early. But
Wow. Oh, so
um,
it was a really advanced. They were trying to get you done quick.
yeah, it was like you do fall, spring, summer, fall, spring, summer.
Wow.
So it was just kind of like it was a little accelerated in
Yeah,
that
yeah, that's
sense.
it. That's the word I was looking for, accelerated.
Yeah,
Because for those of you out there in the cyber world, it's usually the first 2 years are that, and then the last 2 years are your major. What he's saying is he did it all in one and then got into the major super fast.
right. But I guess my problem was, I remember I was taking this one class. I think it was something to do with finance, and I thought I was doing really well in the class. I'd take the test, and they would post like your grades on like a sheet outside the office, and
Hmm.
it would be next to your student number.
Right, right.
So I look at it, I glance at it, and I say, "Oh, that looks good." I guess I'm getting a B on everything. And I think as the semester's winding to close, I had like a feeling, maybe I'm reading this wrong. So I went, and I double checked, and I realized I had D's
Oh
in that
my
class.
gosh.
Because I wasn't necessarily always, maybe as attentive as I should have been.
Right.
So that was a situation, all of a sudden, that would cost me my enrollment in my major and my scholarship. So it became very important for me to somehow undo all that damage within a couple of weeks.
Wow.
So I had to,
Now it's damage
thankfully,
control.
yeah, thankfully the professor, I was able to charm, my professor, and she let me spend a lot of office hours with her and get things back on track and do extra credit. But
Nice.
that was uh, that was definitely one of those situations.
So was that more of a just not paying attention, procrastination? Like, how could you put that into something? Like, what would you say was the downfall? You just weren't taking it as seriously as you could have?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just in university you have a lot of autonomy,
Yes,
and I think
sometimes too much.
maybe I took too much advantage of my autonomy in
Okay.
that situation.
Well, that's a very mature thing to say because looking back, it's a lot easier. And now you can go, yeah, I probably shouldn't have done that. That's
Right.
amazing. Wow. And so she was able to help you out. So it wasn't kind of like, sorry, dude.
Yeah, she took pity on me. So
Nice.
God bless her.
Yeah, without a doubt. So for all of this stuff that you were doing, I'm pretty sure I can guess what it was. For all the difficult courses and for all the high end stuff that you were doing, what was me time? What was downtime for you? Were you still just making more movies? Because that's my guess. But like, did you have something else perhaps that was like you were, I don't know, maybe you're a closet video game kid or, you know, you would just like to write scripts or was there something what was your downtime when you had some? What did you choose to spend your time doing?
Back then, I mean, it was definitely spending time with friends.
Hmm,
I think nowadays it's really like stuff like I try to carve out time to cook. I'm
nice.
not Wolfgang,
No,
Puck or
no
anything,
one
but
is. No, no.
you
We'd
know,
have our own TV show, but yeah, it's enjoyable to cook because it's always nice
yeah,
when it's like I try to explain to my wife, it's kind of like chemistry. And meanwhile, she took chemistry and I never did. I didn't have to. I was a history major. I was like, no chemistry for me. Thank you. Bio is enough. And I'm like, you're just putting things together. You see, I was fortunate. My brother went to culinary school and he, in my opinion, basically would be a chef, but he dropped out and decided that culinary wasn't for him when they told him in one class, you're going to be working 60, 90, 100 hours a week. And his response was, check, please. Like, no, I don't want to do this. And my brother can, if you give him 10 ingredients, he could make you 15, 20 different recipes. Me, on the other hand, if you show me how to make those recipes, I can keep recreating it. That's how I explain to the kids the difference between a cook and a chef. A chef makes the actual recipe, the cook repeats it over and over again. So
Right.
as long as you can, and it, it wasn't like, okay, let's throw that in the garbage and ramen soup for dinner it is, so it's just something fun to do. And then once you get the hang of it, it's like you're addicted and you just want to make something better and better. It's kind of like, what is that Amazon commercial where there's that girl, she's sitting at the office and she's looking at her lunch and she can't stand it. And all of a sudden she orders one pot and then orders something else and orders something else and orders something else. And then at the end of the commercial, she has made this unbelievable meal. And that's what it is. It's like anything else. Like, I guess going back to the film thing, you didn't really know what this was all comprised of and how to do everything until you went to high school and then you went to college. And then on top of that, like any other job, you learn so much more when you're actually doing it. College only
Right.
teaches you not even the application. They're just teaching you what it is. And then you have to apply that. So once you get that first job, it's just like teaching. I was sat in the classroom and I'm just kind of like, this isn't going to work, but whatever. And then you get in the classroom and it's your job and you're going, okay, how am I going to make this work? How am I going to keep these kids entertained and occupied and interested and want to do the work? And it's like it's your personality. Your personality is what keeps the kids interested. If you don't have one, then they're not going to be.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think that it's like if I mean, like you said, it's like the hands-on of actually doing it. It trumps any kind of theory about how to do it
Yeah,
or any kind of fear about how will it shake out. How will I be on the other end of this? It's just you gotta jump into it, and if you fail, then that's one thing, but you can always pick yourself back up and get back to it.
exactly. It's well said. You got to give it a try. How are you going to know if you're good at it? How are you going to know if you like it? It's like, I don't know. I grew up in a household where my parents were like, I guess they would have been called foodies back in the day. And every time a new restaurant would open in New Jersey, they'd always want to take us. And my parents would be like, look, I don't care what you order, but you are going to try whatever your father and I had, whether you like it or not. You're just going to try it. We're not going to tell you have to order something, but you're going to
Right.
try it. And that just opened up my palate. It opened up my world. And it just made me so accepting of all different kinds of foods. And like I said before, to connect with the kids in the classroom, I'm like, where are you from? And a kid will say whatever country, and I might just happen to know a dish. And I'm like, hey, have you ever had this? Oh my God, that's my mom's favorite dish. And then they look at me like, how do you know that? And I go, because I like food. I like food from around the world. I want something different. That's what's so great about America. You walk down almost any street in America, and it's every type of cuisine you could think of. You don't have to eat the same thing every day. We're not a monoculture. We have everything you could imagine. And that's what makes it interesting. That's what makes it lively and fun. And like you said, if you don't like it, just try something else. There's so much that you can possibly learn. So,
Definitely.
is there something about Don Estridge as a school that maybe you learned after you left when you went to high school that you were like, I didn't even realize I learned that from the Don?
Let me think. Um, I did. I mentioned Stancil.
Yeah.
Uh, is he still there, by the way?
No, he actually left and then went back. He works, I want to say he works at American Heritage now. I think he works at a private
Okay.
school.
Okay. But I think one thing. I think I mentioned this when we recorded last time, but um, Stancil in his class, I remember there was an incident we had where, I mean, not we had, but there was this news story that dominated the coverage a lot of the time was the shooting at Virginia Tech,
Right, right.
and he came in and he showed us it was a big deal because the newspapers would basically publish the shooter's manifesto,
Right.
and the pictures would be on the cover. I remember he came in, he showed it to us, and he kind of discussed why he thought this was so exploitative and wrong
Wow.
to really publish some of this stuff. And he encouraged us all. He basically had the class write a letter to the editor and the
Wow.
writers to criticize it. We all did. And I remember we did that, and he got a reply back from the editor, and he read it out in the class where the editor said, accused him of like, oh, you're misusing your influence as a teacher by having
Right.
these kids
Right.
write this letter. And I thought that was really, I remember at the time, each step of the way, I was so kind of fascinated that you could criticize something like a newspaper.
Right.
And then also for there to be this other perspective and for him to share with us that this level of like, what does it mean to direct your students to be outraged about this. And
Right.
I think it was just really interesting. I think that was one of those moments that really opened up my, your viewpoint of what you can criticize, like
Right.
what world you live in,
Yeah.
what people work at the newspaper, you can write to them. I
Right.
thought that was all really, it was something I never thought about before
Right.
until this
There's a
class.
whole column of that where you can write in
Right.
every week and decide, I don't like this, I don't like that, and hopefully you get published. And if you're dissatisfied with the way something works, you need to stand up, voice your opinion, and let people know how you think about something. And wow, that's interesting that you guys were writing, like, I guess it's op-ed articles that you were writing to the editor of this to tell them, hey, we don't appreciate this. And you're glorifying this person. And I agree. I just don't think that names of people who do horrible things should be publicized, because a lot of people, that's why they're doing it. They want the fame. And if you don't let them have it, they're not getting what they want. So here you are as kids voicing your opinion. And I don't think Stancil made you do this. It wasn't like, hey, you
No,
do
no,
this or you
no,
fail the class.
no, not at all. But I mean, I think I really did respect, and to this day, I still think it was a really cool thing for him to do is to read the reply back to us.
Yeah, he didn't have to do
I
that.
think give us, yeah, and give us the room to, think about it. I thought it was really, I think that's one of the things I thought he was a great teacher. I think because
Yeah.
he did stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. He made class so much fun. The announcements were great. My favorite was this story that I remember one year. I can't remember when it was, but I remember one year. Every homeroom there was this kid that constantly complained about how bad the morning announcements were and how hard is it to read a teleprompter, and this is so bad. Why do we even have to watch it? And I was really good friends with Mr. Stancil when he was there. I'm still friends with him, but obviously I don't see him every day anymore. And one day I got so mad, I literally took the kid by the hand, dragged him to the studio, and said, Mr. Stancil, this kid thinks your announcements are terrible. And this is a joke and it's easy to do. Get him on the air today. And the kid looked at me, went pale white, and Mr. Stancil went, not a problem. And he just sat him down in the chair and he did it. And then I ran back to the room because at that time he was doing the announcements live. They weren't recorded. So
Right.
there he is. He wasn't the regular announcement kid. So all of his friends, as soon as it was over, was like, why were you on the announcements? Why were you doing this? And he was like, because I made fun of it in Mr. Proper's class and he made me go do it. And he never complained ever again. And I'm like, this is not easy. There's like
Yeah.
20 people trying to make this. I go, these are middle school kids who are learning how to do this skill. They're learning how to do it. And you're going to sit here on this end and complain? I was sick and tired of it. You go do it. And then he came back and he was like, I will never complain about how hard it is to make a TV show ever again. And then all the other kids were like, some of them were scared and other ones were like, I want to do the announcements. I'm like, go take Mr. Stancil's class. I've made my point. So, but it's amazing. Like, people love to poo-poo things that they don't understand the enormity of what it takes to be done. And these
Right.
are okay, so you start in sixth grade at 10 or 11, seventh grade, 12, 13, eighth grade, 13, 14. This isn't easy. And I don't think too many people have a full-blown studio in their house where they can practice this stuff. So it's just amazing, I guess, the perspective of certain people, and that kid just needed his perspective adjusted. And apparently it worked. So no one ever questioned in my room for a long time about doing the announcements.
No, that'll do it.
It pretty much did.
Yeah.
So my last question is always, do you remember who Don Estridge was as a person?
I don't think I ever knew who Don Estridge was as a person, if I'm
And
being
Armaan, I,
honest.
I totally appreciate your honesty because that really tells me you didn't go look it up. You weren't like, okay, I'm going to find out. Don Estridge, the school is named after him for obvious reasons, Don Estridge High Tech Middle School, but it's named after him because he was the inventor of the personal computer. He supposedly, in that actual building, it used to be an IBM facility, and he invented the personal computer. And I don't know if you remember this, but we actually have Don Estridge's personal computer, not the one he invented, but the one that he used. When his family found out that we were naming the school, they donated the computer as a goodwill thank you gesture. Unfortunately, him and his wife died in a plane crash. I think it's in 1984, going to a conference to discuss computing and the ways of the world. And unfortunately, we lost him way too soon. But we have the school and we have this beautiful memento of his as the computer. So that's why the school is that. Well, as always, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and opening up and telling the kids your hardships, your positives, all of your wonderful achievements. And we look forward to seeing your name in the bright lights and making major motion pictures. And that in itself, for me, is what's worth it, is to see my kids turn into adults and to see them find their profession and their love and make it happen. And it's just so amazing that you'd be, again, willing to come back, talk to your eighth grade middle school teacher and tell your story of how I got
No, I really appreciate you having me. I'm glad you think again, like I have some, worth sharing. I think that's debatable,
here. That's for me to
but
decide, young man.
yeah, but yeah, I appreciate you having me, and thank you for, sitting down and talking with me.
Awesome. Thank you for listening to How I Got Here podcast with Mr. Proper. Music provided by Miss Mata. Thank you to Patty Fernandez for the introduction. Thank you to Seth Proper for logistics and behind the scenes production. Join us next time for another episode of How I Got Here and more stories of former students and their journey.